Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every week to talk with interesting guests and discuss topical issues, and we've got a man on the show today who can really go through the generations and provide some interesting insight in Oklahoma.
Well, he can indeed, and wearing many hats.
Yeah.
Andy Coates has been a guest on our show several times and has had a number of important positions in this state and in this nation, as a matter of fact, and I got a hold of him the other day and I said, I just wish you'd come tell us about some of these things you've done and that have happened to you. He said he'd be glad to do it, and so I'm pleased to say that my partner, Andy Coates, who has also worn a private practice hat, is going to be with us and has some fascinating things to tell us.
He spent many years at the University of Oklahoma, now the Dean of the Law School, and he'll be here with us to discuss all of his years in public service and in the private sector.
Well,
Andy Coates.
And he's made a huge difference every place he's been, a huge positive difference every place he's been.
It's coming up next on The Verdict.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
Looks like somebody doesn't want you to know the facts about Cox Digital Telephone. Maybe it's because over 1.5 million customers are saving big, and you can too. Plus, you'll save even more on all your Cox services when you bundle today.
Oh, here's that new phone service I've been hearing about.
So while the phone company may not like competition,
Nice doggy.
you're gonna love it.
Nice doggy.
1 in 4 women will be a victim of domestic or sexual violence in their lifetime.
That's too many.
That's why we want you to know that if you or someone you know is suffering at the hands of an abuser, there is help. Call the Oklahoma Safe Line at 1-800-522-SAFE for access to state and local resources that can truly make a difference. Call anonymously, call toll-free, call today, because domestic violence is not a game. It's life or death.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Once again, we're pleased to have Andy Coates, Dean of the University of Oklahoma College of Law and Director of the Law Center at the University of Oklahoma, as our guest. He's been on a number of times before, but to remind you, Andy did his undergraduate work at the University of Oklahoma, where he was inducted into Phi Beta Kappa. He did his law work at the University of Oklahoma College of Law, where he was inducted into Order of the Coif, both of those, of course, being very prestigious organizations based upon academic performance. He was in private practice for many years, and in addition to that, he's taken some time off from private practice to be the Oklahoma County District Attorney for a number of years, been, in fact, Mayor of Oklahoma City, and has in recent years served as the only Oklahoman ever elected to the presidency of the American College of Trial Lawyers. And he's been a friend of mine since I was about 14 years of age, and it is really a genuine pleasure to bring him back, and we've entitled this show A Man for All Seasons, which indeed he is. Andy, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much. It's delightful to be back with you and one of my favorite mayors, and be back on The Verdict. It's always a great show.
Let's start with the most recent. What's going on at the University of Oklahoma and the law school right now? What are y'all working on?
Well, it's interesting. This is I just finished my decade as dean. I'm in my 11th year now, and I really am quite pleased with the progress that's been made by almost everyone there. But we have the law school is now about 500 students. We have entering classes of about 170, 65 or 70 students. We'll have 13 or 1400 applications for one of those positions, so it's obviously difficult to get in. The entering class averages, it's about a 3.6. So I feel good about the law school and those law students. We are in a little different situation than most other branches of higher education because we have a way to test ourselves to see how we're doing, and that's the bar examinations. And the results of our bar examinations have been truly remarkable.
And they're not administered by the law school?
They're not. They're administered by the Board of Bar Examiners, which are made up of people appointed by the Supreme Court of Oklahoma, in Oklahoma and other states the same way. But the last 3 years on the midterm exam, the bar exam is given twice a year, once in February and once in July. On the February bar exam, for the last 3 years, our first time takers were 100%. Every one of them passed, which is, I think, amazing. On the July exam that was just passed, the 2006 July exam, this graduating class, the people that took out of that class, 118 of them, passed at 99%, which again is just extraordinary. And what's interesting about this is quite a number of our good students are taken away by firms in Texas and New York and California and other places. So really that's not all our best students that are taking that examination. That's the breadth and width of the class. And so we feel very good about that. And a number that I'm particularly proud of is we're the #1 school in Texas on the Texas bar passage rates. So it's a good time, and as far as you can tell, and having an objective standard out there to see if you're meeting it, it seems to me things are going about as well as one could hope.
Well, what do you expect in the next few years at the College of Law that isn't there now, or what kind of programs or facilities or whatever?
We continue to have to try to catch up with all that's going on in technology. As you know, since you teach down there, you know that we're doing one classroom at a time to be sure that the professors have all of the bells and whistles, all the technology that's available. Right now, we are sending a couple of classes that are taught at OU out into the world, and people at other law schools can take them. We have a man who teaches a class in American Indian law, and he teaches it in conjunction with a man who teaches it on behalf of Eskimos in Ottawa, Canada, a guy who teaches it on behalf of the Maoris in New Zealand, and a guy that teaches it on behalf of the Aborigines in Australia, and they teach it all at the same time. And the students get to see each other and get to know each other and get to ask questions. In other words, we've opened the windows of the law school, and you're going to see a lot more of that, I think, over the years. I think that distance learning is going to become a major part of what we do. So our biggest effort, I think, is, and it's not inexpensive, is trying to be sure the classrooms have in it everything that allows that to go on, and that the teachers have ways to deal with all the technology that's there. In some places around the country, they've got a situation where each student has something in their hand that they can respond to, and the teacher will start 2 or 3 questions at the start of the class and then teach the class, and at the end of it he'll ask some questions, and they'll respond to those questions by punching whatever it is they hold in their hand to get a response back from the technological boards up there. So as you can tell, I'm just distantly acquainted with all these things, but we are working hard to do that. So I think you'll see a lot of that, and if we can do that and maintain our standards as the years go forward, I think we will have accomplished a good deal.
Let me change the subject. Mid-'70s, you took some time off from active private practice to become district attorney of Oklahoma County. Tell us about that.
Well, that's kind of an interesting time in my life. I had been at Crowe and Dunleavy for 13 years. I'd been a partner for 4 or 5 years. I was making a good living doing that, and I was offered a job that paid something like 1/5 of what I was earning, and I was crazy enough to do it. You remember Boston Smith, who was a district judge. He was also David Boren's advisor. He was a counsel to the governor. And he talked me into really to taking the job. Jim McKinney, who had been the first assistant up there for years, had called me. I was president of the county bar at the time, and had called me and asked me if I would if I would endorse him. And Jim was a great friend of my family. He had helped my father out in a time when my father had kind of a tough go. And so I felt greatly indebted to him. I liked him anyway, and I said, sure, I'll endorse it. So I wrote a letter and sent it out, and Boston Smith started trying to call me, and I thought he was calling about that. And finally, I was arguing a case out in the Supreme Court, and afterwards, Boston came up afterwards and said, the governor's not going to appoint anybody that's in the office, and he wants you to do it. Well, you can knock me over the feather. Something that never occurred to me. I'd had some criminal law experience, but not much. So I said, yeah, I don't think there's any way I could do that. I don't can afford it. And well, anyway, then Boring called. He's talked me into do 2 or 3 crazy things, and that was one of them. But I must say, it was extraordinary. Jim McKinney did say, I talked to Jim before I accepted the job, and he did say, well, Andy said, I understand, said if he's not appointed by the office, you ought to do it. I'd be glad to have you, be glad to work with you. He did say, but if I try for anything else, I hope you won't help me. So we did, and I took the job, and it was an extraordinary experience. I really had some most interesting times, some scary times, but it was fascinating.
We have about 30 seconds left in this segment. What about your DA years stands back now when you look back and how you made a difference in Oklahoma County?
Well, when I took over, Curtis Harris had had it for a number of years, and Curtis was a good prosecutor, but he hadn't done anything in terms of the administration of the office, and they were still writing out writs by hand. I mean, it was really like stepping back into Uriah Heep's time. And so I think bringing it along and bringing it into the 20th century, making a first-class prosecutor's office out of it, I think was something that I felt really good about. And I'll tell you something interesting. I spent more time as DA trying not to send people to the penitentiary than I did trying to send them there. Prosecutors have enormous power, but if you can use the criminal justice system to intervene in someone's life at an appropriate time, you can change their life and they will become good citizens again. If you send them to prison, the chances of their becoming good citizens are not. Some of them have to go, some of them need to go. People with violence have to go, but there are ways to do things that I felt were good. We put some programs in that I thought were effective in that respect.
Andy Coates is our guest. We're visiting with him on The Verdict. One more segment with Andy, so stay with us.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Not sure where you're headed? NATS can help you find your way. It's the National Athletic Testing System. We call it NATS. You'll call it your launching pad to success. NATS will give you a standardized evaluation that will help you measure your performance and give that information to college coaches so they can accurately evaluate your potential. NATS also helps with academic support. Join with the Oklahoma High School Football Coaches Association and head for success at www.nats.us.
I'm Chris Paul.
And I'm Dave Lyall with some of our friends from the Boys and Girls Clubs in Oklahoma. Growing up is tough. Everyone needs a fun and safe place to learn and grow.
Boys and Girls Clubs offer programs that instill a sense of pride, purpose, and belonging. Club kids have grown up to become movie stars and, yes, even basketball legends.
We hope you'll join Cox, Oklahoma in supporting the Boys and Girls Club.
Get involved with your local club today because it truly is
a positive place for kids.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and today's guest, Andy Coates. Andy is the Dean of the University of Oklahoma's Law School. We talked last segment about what's going on at the law school now and his years as district attorney. We'd like now to move into your years as the mayor of Oklahoma City. You replaced Patience Ladding, who had been there for 3 terms, as long as anyone has been mayor of Oklahoma City. What made you run, and how did all that take place?
Well, again, it was interesting. I began to get some calls from people in the community in a response to some questions that Ms. Ladding had answered about whether she was going to run for another term. And some of the leaders of the community called and said, would you be interested in running for mayor? And I said, well, I really hadn't thought about it. I would think about it a little bit. And she said, we don't know whether Patience is going to run or not, but she's been in there long enough and we'd like for you to run. And I said, well, Patience Ladding's a friend of mine. I wouldn't care to run against her, but I'll go ask her. So I did, and she said, no, if you'll do it, he said, I won't. I'll step aside. So I thought that was very gracious, and she did, and I ran and got elected, and ran against Bob McCoy, who was a sitting council person. It's been hard for a sitting council person to get elected. Some people do it, but it's over the years it's been a hard deal, and so we had a pretty much of a full scale big fighting election, and I was able to succeed at the election, get elected. When I got there, things were really bad shape. The Penn Square Bank had collapsed, and it was the only bank they just let close, and it had sent shockwaves throughout the community, and we were in sort of a gridlock. I used to tell people that becoming mayor, I felt a little bit like the fellow who was accused of getting drunk and setting his bed on fire. He said he denied being drunk, and he said he didn't set the bed on fire, said he was already on fire when he got in it. At the mayor's time, at those days, that's the way I felt. We were closing parks, we were shutting down swimming pools, we were doing all things because, as you know, the city rises and falls on sales tax, and nobody was buying anything or selling anything, and it's just a terrible time. By the time I'd been there 2 years, we began to pull out of it. In our last couple of years, we were able to be a little more creative and a little more contribute, I think, in terms of making a comeback. We had tried to do a sales tax election, and the kind of shape the state was in, that 7 days before our sales tax election, the governor announced that he was going to call the legislature back into session to try to raise the sales tax. And as you might guess, that killed ours off in good shape. But we were able, toward the end of the time, to get a major bond issue passed that with the 6 to fix the city that dealt with sewers and water systems and streets, and I was able to get that done, and I think by the time we left, we were at least in good shape, so that when Ron Norick came in, he had a good place to start from, a good platform to launch himself from.
What are your most memorable memories of either fun things or unfun things that happened to you while you were mayor?
Well, a number of things. Of course, we did do Remington Park when I was there, and I went to Youngstown to meet with Mr. DeBartolo, and they'd had a guy that went around the countryside saying really bad things about the DeBartolos, and but they'd owned the San Francisco 49ers, and they'd owned the Pittsburgh hockey team and some others, and had been really checked out from top to bottom. They weren't bad people, but this guy went around saying they were mafia. So the media asked me one time about that, and I said, well, 2 things. On the record, I will say they've been checked out backwards and forwards, so have we. We find them in good shape. And then off the record, I'll say this to you. If they really were mafia, do you think this guy could continue to go around and do that around the country? And so we got that done. But I went to Youngstown, met Mr. DeBartolo, and it was really an interesting experience. And he had flown in a helicopter around the city trying to decide where it went, and he thought that zoo site was a great place for it. So that got up and running, and it's had some successes and some difficult times. But things like that, helping bring in some new business and get new things started for the city, were the most fun things I had.
Let me change the subject now, and let's talk about an organization that our viewers may not know anything about, and you might need to tell them a little bit. It's the American College of Trial Lawyers. The last 2 words, trial lawyers, sometimes get people to get up and switch off their set or change the station, but I hope you'll tell them what the name means and what the organization is, because you served in a very high position there.
I did, Kent. It was one of the really high points of my life. The American College of Trial Lawyers, not to be confused with the Association of Trial Lawyers, which is the is the lobbying group for the plaintiff, is a group of the elite trial lawyers on both the defense and the plaintiff side. You must have practiced trial law exclusively for 15 years to be eligible. And then they go through the most amazing process to find out what kind of person you are. That your word is good, that you're professional and civil and courteous, and they talk to judges that you tried cases before and lawyers who were on the other side of the case, and you're screened, and of that they're selected. It can never be more than 1% of the Bar Association of each state. So it's a very select and elect group, and it's really the best of the bar, and I think it's the finest professional association in the world. And I was fortunate enough to become the national president. I was unfortunate enough to become the national president the same year I became dean of the law school, and of course this required extraordinary travel. We would pack our bags on Wednesday night, Linda and I, and then we would be gone on the weekend and return on Sunday night, and I'd go in the dean's office for 3 days, and then we'd be back on the road.
And you were visiting other states.
Exactly, visiting the groups of American College trial lawyers, people in each of the fellows in each of the states. We were in 46 states in about a year and a half, and that's an extraordinary amount of travel. So, but it does have a lot of impact. Each member of the United States Supreme Court is a fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers. Because of that, I was able to be on a very small exchange with the English law lords and Justice Thomas and Justice Kennedy and 3 other judges, and then 5 lawyers for our side. And the English law lords and 4 barristers and a solicitor from England spent a week in Edinburgh and London, and then spent a week in Washington the next year. And we're able to really make some exchanges about how they do things and how we do things to both improve the system of justice and improve our relationships with those countries. So I think the American College does a lot of wonderful things, and certainly I think that was one of them.
But you're the only Oklahoman ever to be a president.
Yes, indeed, and it was, as I say, it's one of those very rare things that happens. It's a matter of selection. You're selected by the past presidents of the college rather than an election for. So I was a regent for 4 years and never heard anything mentioned, and one day they come in and tap you on the shoulder and you're selected. So it was an extraordinary time, and I really did revel in my chance. I might point out that my partner Myers is a fellow of the American College, which is we have 3 or 4 of them in the firm, and it's very hard to become a fellow, but it was extraordinary, and being president was a great thing. I told him that the highest honor I'd ever had was that being president was the second highest honor I'd ever had. That the highest honor was becoming a fellow in the first place, and I think that really is so.
We have about 30 seconds left in this segment. Beyond the nuts and bolts of what's in the law books, what do you try to teach a student at the University of Oklahoma? What do you want them to depart OU understanding?
We try to teach them what a lawyer's proper place in the social structure is. And we think it's very important that we teach them professionalism and a professional detachment so that they're able to view their job like doctors do or other professionals do, and not personalize it, not become so personally involved in their cases that they do things they shouldn't do. We try to teach them the highest ethical standards, and we try to teach them courtesy and collegiality and civility so that they do well with each other. Because if you can trust the lawyer on the other side, you can get rid of a lot of the undergrowth, do twice as good a job for your client as you can if you have to fight over every issue. And
a lot more efficiently.
Exactly, and save money for the clients and for the system. So we teach them, that they're a part of a system that's critical to the way our democracy works, and I hope we're doing that.
I think you are. Dean Andy Coates, thanks for being our guest on The Verdict.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Kent and I'll have a final word after this.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Hi, honey. You've got to check this out.
What? What are we listening to?
I had digital phone service installed today.
It sounds just like before.
I know, but it's going to save us a ton of money.
With Cox Digital Telephone, you'll save big every month. Keep your same phone number and get your favorite calling features. Just pay less.
That does sound good.
You should hear the upstairs phone.
Just keep it.
Thank you. Dr. Kessler? What's up with the pizzas?
Well, I just got my first satellite bill, and those extra fees were a bit of a shocker. So I had to take a second job.
Hey, this was supposed to be pepperoni, dillweed.
Hey, it's Dr. Dillweed to you.
Whatever.
Kids. It's cool. I'm a people person.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get all your entertainment without the hidden charges from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, wrapping up our show with the Dean of the University of Oklahoma's Law School, Andy Coates.
Very fascinating show. It's always fun to visit with Andy. As I say, I've done that for many years, and he's been a friend and a colleague and a partner and a mentor, and just awfully pleased that he would join us again. A man for all seasons, indeed he is. If there is one in Oklahoma, he is it. We're going to, Mick, change the subject a little bit in this next week's show. We're going to be talking about all-terrain vehicles and safety issues. And we're going to have a couple of people on that know a lot about that. And I think we'll be well informed.
Talking about the three-wheelers, the four-wheelers.
Three-wheelers and the four-wheelers, yeah.
Okay, be interesting.
Go buzzing around and sometimes stay on, sometimes you don't.
And we want to give some information on internet websites where you can go and check out Andy Coates' law school at law.ou.edu. And of course, visit our website, theverdict.tv. Give us an idea about a show that you'd like to see right here. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.